everybody, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to another recommendations video. And so this one has been asked for me to do for quite a while. I made one back, I think, closer to Valentine's Day. I made one of these recommendations and it's a fun one for me. This is a trope that, well, I wouldn't even call it a trope because you can have the tropes within this, but novels that have BDSM in them. I made a video like this before where I think I might have had a couple of these on it, but the way that I'm categorizing this one is going to be a little bit different than last time. So last time I just like listed ones that I liked. And so a few months back, I actually did a post in a Facebook group that I'm on, which is for an author. And I asked for BDSM recommendations that had the rules explained and limits and things set up very well. Just because I enjoy having DNS dynamics and I enjoy having that kind of sex portrayed, but I also wanted to be able to make recommendations to people who like hadn't read them before and have it at kind of like every level, as well as make the rules clear, because I, as someone who has read lots of them at this point, I can read a book and be like, oh, there's DNS things happening in this, you know, there's BDSM elements happening in this. So even if they don't follow the rules and they're doing things that would be dangerous in real life, in a book I can read it and be like, yeah, but this is fun and I enjoy the dynamic. But when I'm making recommendations to people that maybe they want to try one or they don't know those rules, I want to have some that are a good example and some that are just crazy and fun and they get a little bit kinky and stuff. So I've broken this into two parts. So I have ones where they follow the rules very well and there's going to be lots of discussions about limits and consent and aftercare done really well and things like that. And then I'm going to have some that are just crazy town and there is BDSM happening that is not always perfectly consensual and just like crazy. So I wanted to have some of each just because I enjoy when it gets a little crazy, but I also just melt when people have conversations about consent. I just get so like, oh my gosh, they're talking about it. This is great. Please keep talking about it. I get so excited. So I have both. So I'm going to start with those and then we'll work our way through. Okay, so the first one I want to talk about is Submission by C.D. Reiss. So this was my first C.D. Reiss, and this is one of those where like it was when I feel like Kindle was really getting going, and so it was released in a lot of like really small pieces, but it's been like rebundled into basically like a 4-pack, like a one with like a, what's it called, a trilogy with like an epilogue one, but they were released in these like little bite-sized things. But I think the series as a whole is like called Submission, and this one was so fun. So this is a kind of a setup that you've seen before. It did remind me, a lot of parts of it like did remind me of 50 Shades, but it was the parts that I liked about it. But we have our main character who, right in the beginning of it, he's a really wealthy bachelor, but he is also he's a divorced man, and he makes it clear. So this is where it was weird, because he makes it clear to the woman who, she also has been like, she's kind of been panting after her best friend for a long time. And then she also got out of a relationship with this artist who has been using her as like his muse for a lot of his art, and it's like really not consensual, but also he's an artist, so shouldn't he be able to use his pain to tell a story? But so these two kind of get pushed together. It actually starts with her accidentally dumping something in his lap, and she gets fired from her job, and then he helps her get a job at one of his bars, but the one that he doesn't manage. So that's kind of nice, because she's like, I'm not going to work for you because this is going to feel like you're paying me off. And he's like, well, you still technically will work for me, but someone else is going to be your boss, and it's someone who like she'll give me the what for. So she has a really great boss who's not him. Sorry, my microphone just came unclipped off my tank top and it felt weird. But anyway, so they enter into this relationship together, and he tells her, he's like, I'm super into my ex-wife and I want her back. And she's like, okay, I'm still not over my ex, and my music career is really important to me. So it's one of those where like they both mutually are like, we're having a lot of fun and I'm still gonna like be here for you, but not like long term. And we'll see where that goes. But I really, really did like this one. And the submission in it was really fun because they tried like a lot of different things. I feel like in some of these that I read, like it's the same scenarios that they act out because that's what their like kink is. But I really liked his like ups and downs and like the different things that they like to do at different times in their relationship. So it was really fun. Then I want to talk about a really fun series, but one that, oh my gosh, guys, this book. So this is actually a series by Minstral Dawn is the author's name. And the series is, I can't remember the name of the series, but these are like the two main books that I read. I'll put up a picture. I think one of them is Submitting to the King, and one of them is Kidnapped by the Huntsman, something like that. But they all are about these women who are in the real world and they get sucked into fairy somehow. One of them, she gets kidnapped because she is the huntsman's fated mate, and once you see your fated mate, they're like marked, basically, like they're not anything visible, but they're like marked in their aura that they have a fated mate. And so he's a very powerful being in the Fae world. He is above all the other courts because he's the huntsman and his job is to hunt down Fae who break the rules. So he's very powerful and he has a lot of enemies because of that. And so when he sees his fated mate, he has no choice but to kidnap her, not only because she's his fated mate and he's going to want her, but also because he has to keep her safe. So this is a captor-captive book. However, all of the sex in this book is consensual and consensual at multiple levels. So the beautiful thing in this book is that this Fae, these kind of Fae, they think that rape is the most horrible thing you can do to someone, which it is and should be done as that. But I feel like in a lot of Fae that we see, they're like orgies all the time and who cares about consent? We'll just like feed you food that makes you do what we want, you know, like that's an issue. And in this, it is not an issue because he's like, I did kidnap you. However, we won't bond ourselves to each other and we won't do anything until you are 100% here for it. And so he does go about trying to seduce her because she's his fated mate and he wants to be with her. But it's great. And he likes some kink and that gets like introduced to their relationship. And the way that it gets talked about and explained, I feel like is really good. So if you like some fantasy and you like the captor-captive trope, but you maybe get a little icked out if it goes too far, this is a fun place to start. These books have cheesy covers. I know it. But the content of this series is amazing. There's one in the series, I think it's the one about the Winter King, or Prince, I don't know, but one of them. It's actually a woman who's been like abused by her fiance, and she like accidentally falls into fairy, and they are both like switches. So he likes to be, the king likes to be dominated too. Guys, it was so good. I love when a manly man likes to be dominated too. And the way that he like teaches her how to do it. Because she's like, I don't know if I like want to hurt you. She's like, that doesn't make me like happy. And he's like, we'll find some things that don't bother you because I like it. And so they take turns. And I loved it. So again, this series, so good. It's also not super angsty. It was really fun and just fascinating. So if you want to learn more about this in like a fanciful situation, I highly recommend this series by Minstral Dawn. I wish she was writing more because I loved it. Then I gotta mention the Wicked Villain series. Ta-da! So yes, so 5 out of the 6 books in this series are out already. I have read 5 of them. I'm holding up my favorite one, which is A Worthy Opponent, which is a retelling of, well, I don't want to say it's a retelling of Peter Pan, but it's more of a retelling of Hook and Tinkerbell. And all of these books take place in this world where there's different territories that break up the land, and each territory is run like by a different villain. And in this one, Hook is in charge of an area, but Peter Pan used to be, and they like took him over, and Tink, she has been working at Hades BDSM Club, which we have seen in the previous 2 books. And this BDSM club is 100% consensual. If you break any of those rules, you're kicked out and not welcome there. But there's every kind of flavor. These books are kinky as hell. They are gay as hell in a lot of them. There is every kind of mixed match of people. There is menages that are both MMF and FFM, and just to mix it all around and have a good time. And the discussions of consent, the safe words, the aftercare in these books, I love. Because that's something I was looking for too, is we'll have these super sexy things and then we just fall asleep together. But in some of the intensity of things are, like, you need aftercare for them. You need reassurances, and it needs to go both ways. Like, doms need to be shown aftercare and subs need to be shown aftercare, and I love it. Also, Tink is a brat, which I didn't know that the term brat was actually, like, involved in the kink community until, like, Kink Talk, which, like, explained it to me. But Tink is a brat for sure. And Katee, whew, she writes the BDSM like nobody's business, and they're fun and quick and dirty and brilliant, and the whole series is amazing, and you should check it out. Then I want to throw a little spin in here because, as I said, I like to see a big, strong man not mind getting dominated. And I then was looking up male submissives. And one of my favorite, like, tiny, teeny corner of subgenre is historical romances with BDSM, as well as historical romances with male submissives, which is, like, impossible to find. I've only found 3 books that had them in it at all, because it's still hard these days for men to get around that they want to be a submissive. But imagine being in a time where, like, the women didn't have power to begin with, so then finding a woman who would be willing to dominate you and give you what you need is so hard. And so I got to show you The Duke I Tempted by Scarlett Peckham. I haven't read the rest of the trilogy because this book was amazing and it had the exact kink that I was, like, looking for, and the other 2 are, like, different forms of BDSM, and I, like, just didn't care at the time. But this is about a duke who, it's the first scene is him going to get whipped from a dominatrix. So there's this pleasure house where he can go to get whipped, but he doesn't always have to have the sexual component with this person, but he needs to be able to give up the control and, like, be submissive to someone. And there are moments in this book where he thinks that she'd be into it, and she is into it when they start kind of exploring it between them, but she thinks she's being bad. Like, she thinks that that they have a toxic relationship, which they do before they talk about it, because if you're not talking about it and you're just doing these, like, kind of cruel things to each other without it being an established relationship, like, that is abuse if you don't have safe words and things in place. And that's why I love that book, because as they're, like, this ends up being a marriage of convenience, but then it just gets deeper, and, like, he gets angrier and angrier because he doesn't want to cheat on her, even though, you know, it's a marriage of convenience, so it'd be okay. But he doesn't know how to explain the kink that he wants. And this story is about that. And I picked it for this, even though, like, the communication's not great. But I picked it because I like showing when a male is a submissive in the bedroom, but still a strong, powerful, tough guy outside the bedroom. Like, that's how, like, it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. And so that's what I love about that book. And I feel like once they get to the conversations, the problem is he's embarrassed to talk about it. So there's miscommunication in that regard. But once it's out in the open and we can talk about it, the conversation is really good. And we get to see a woman who could be horrified and just run screaming and say, take your perversion and go over there. And instead she's like, I love you. This turns me on too. How do we make this work? And I loved it. So then I have Club Shadowlands by Cherise Sinclair. So this is a series called Masters of the Shadowlands. There is about 14 million books in this series, but this woman was suggested to me over and over and over again when I was asking for good explanation of rules. So this is a kink club called the Shadowlands, and the first one is a novella, and it's about the owner of the club and a woman who, like, her car breaks down and she, like, stumbles into it. And he kind of is, like, keeping her safe while also kind of, like, does any of this do something for you? And he actually, it's funny because this guy, this is the only one in the series, and I don't know if the author, like, wrote this and, like, changed her mind, but the way she gets around this, like, being a novella is that this guy, he can read minds or read emotions, something like that. Again, the only one in this series who can do that, so I feel like it was kind of like incidental that it happened or something, and then nobody else can do that. But so he can tell that she's aroused by what she's seeing, and so he, like, pushes her further and further into it. But I mean, she's giving consent, but also he can tell she's, like, really aroused even though she's shy. And so this entire book, this entire series, which I read the first 3 in the series, and then they kind of ended up being the same each one, so I didn't, like, keep going, but I gave them 4 or 5 stars, all 3 that I read, because it was about, one of them's about a submissive who only had a bad dom before, and so she's learning how to have a good one. One of them's about someone who has only, like, she's really nervous to get into it. One of them's about someone who's training to be a club submissive, which there's a lot of rules that go with that, and it was just fascinating. So it was fun to have another one set at, like, a kink world, and then, like, get to see all the different dynamics, because there's a bunch of them, and it's really good. Then I got to bring up Nikki Sloane's Blindfold Club. So not all of the books in this series are, well, are they? Hold on. They are. They are. Man, this series is amazing, but the reason why I said that is, like, the Blindfold Club isn't a kink club, but all the people in this series, it's all exploring different kinks. So Nikki Sloane, I'm obsessed with her. I've read every book that she's written at this point, and I want more now. She writes a whole gamut, but she writes really great power dynamics. Like, whoo! So the Blindfold Club is, like, this place where it is kind of sort of a high-end brothel, kind of sort of, but there's these women who, they get blindfolded to a table and they get auctioned, like, but not in front of everyone. Like, someone will come in and make a bid for them, and then they have someone who's facilitating it, but the woman stays blindfolded because the men have the choice to never let them see them, but they can choose to let themselves be seen if they want to. But it's where a lot of, like, people of power will go, so that, like, the woman who they've actually, like, slept with, like, doesn't know who they are, kind of thing. And it's really great. We get to see one where it is, like, a woman's boss, like, comes in and buys her. She's gonna do this for one night only, and he finds out about it, and he, like, doesn't want anyone else to have her, so he, like, goes in and pays for her. There's one with the owner of it, Joseph, which he's great. Like, Joseph shows up in pretty much everybody's book because he is he's a master dom, just great. And so he actually will, like, teach people through the series, which I loved. Like, I love when there's teaching and stuff. And so he will, like, co-dom somebody, or like, oh geez, it's just so good. There's a relationship within here that's a it's not it's, like, kind of polyamorous, but they're not, like, in a, like, I don't know what to say. I guess it is polyamory, but they are a couple, and, like, she's their submissive because they're both doms, and so they like to have someone to get to submit to them together, which is, it's pretty hot. And then that girl, like, finds someone that she loves, and so they, like, make her a deal. They're like, until you're sure you want to be with him, please don't, like, have sex with this person until we figure out. And so they're like, well, what counts as sex? And so they're allowed to, like, do anything else but that. And it's great. It's a wonderful series. It's super good. Lowdown Dirty by Holly Trent. So this one is really interesting. And again, I need to look to see if she's wrote more in this series, but this is about 2 people that both used to be in the scene. And so this woman gets a contract to help build some things in this, like, really small town. And they have this, like, tiny kink club in town that is actually, like, a different, it's like a bar. No, it's not. It's someone's house. And then, like, twice a month they have a kink party there. And this girl in town, like, gets invited to it because her friend knows she, like, used to have a dom and, like, used to be in the scene. And then, like, he used to have a, like, he was married and he has a son who's, like, 18 already, and he just has, like, not been getting what he needed out of relationships, so he's kind of stopped doing it. And so their friends kind of conspire to, like, get them together, and they're both just that, like, they're both, like, jaded with the scene. And I love seeing them, like, she explains all the like, messed up relationships she's had, and he's like, well, I'm not going to be like any of those. Like, I'm going to be what you need. And it's great. It's really sweet. Again, lots of conversation about, like, limits and then, like, what bad experiences look like, because I think it's good to see what the bad experiences look like so we can compare them. And I like that. And then the last one I want to talk about that is a good one, which is just, I need to get a copy of this book. I always put it off because I really don't like the cover of this book, but it is fantastic. So this is a male-male age gap BDSM, and the older male is the submissive. Okay? Ho, 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 ho. So this is about Lori and Toby. This is by Alexis Hall, who you probably heard of him from Boyfriend Material. Which I did not like because he made a pitch for the mainstream, and all the things I loved about his other books were just not in that one. He, like, sanitized it, and it made me sad. But this one is about, so Toby's only 19, and he is a dominant, but he's never got to fully do it because he's young, and the gay relationships he's been in, like, nobody, like, they just don't give him the chance to be the dominant. And so he goes to a kink club, and Lori, who is, again, we have a jaded submissive. He was in a long-term relationship with a guy who he thought he would be with forever, and then that guy just, like, left him. And so, but it's been, like, 5 years. And so he's just been kind of like a temporary sub with different people, and will just, you know, go home with somebody for a night, get his rocks off, and go home. And he's really just doesn't know if he wants to do it anymore. And then he meets Toby, who he's like, dude, number one, he's like, you look too young to be here. And he's like, I'm not. How am I supposed to learn how to be a dom if no one will help me? And Lori is just, like, kind of enchanted with him. And so he ends up going home with him. Or, I mean, like, Toby goes home with Lori, and they have kind of awkward fumbling. And then Lori, like, kicks him out at the end. And Toby is still, like, standing on the door, and he's like, I didn't like how that ended. Like, I know that we're not instantly going to be together, but we need, like, some aftercare for that. Like, you just kicked me out when it was over. And, oh, like, I'm going to cry now. Because Lori is just so jaded that he doesn't want to make himself vulnerable like that. Whereas, like, staying with someone after a scene and talking through it, it's hard. Like, you have to open up your squishy belly to someone, and it's not fun. But they begin this, like, absolutely, like, beautiful relationship. It's still pretty messed up because Lori, again, is keeping Toby at a distance. But Toby is just so, like, innocent and beautiful that he just gets through his defenses. And it was fun because it's an age gap. And so Lori really feels like, wow, I'm probably just this guy's, like, trainer. You know, like, I'm going to show him how to do it, and then he's going to find somebody his own age and leave me, and he'll have a perfect relationship with him. And so Lori is really insecure, even though he's this gorgeous, hot, like, 39-year-old doctor, and he's just made so insecure by this, like, 19-year-old wreck. Like, he's a wreck. He doesn't make a lot of money. He is a wreck, but he's just so beautiful to Lori. So I highly, highly recommend For Real by Alexis Hall, because it was one of my first BDSM books, too. And one of my first gay romances, and just so great. Okay, so that is all that I'm going to talk about for, like, healthy BDSM relationships, okay? Not that they're perfect the whole time, but ones where, like, communication's really good, we talk about our limits, we talk about things like that. Now I'm going to get into some that are a little bit nastier, and we don't follow the rules, and like safe words are not always used and stuff like that. And so I'm clearly separating the two. So now I'm going to give you some recs where I just really enjoyed the book, even though they're not, you know, this is fantasy. Don't do this in real life. Always have a safe word. Always know your limits. Always know your rules, and listen to them and communicate. Anyway, okay. So first I want to talk about Sinfully Mastered by Serena Akeroyd. So this book is a lot to explain. But basically, when the BDSM comes about, these two have been in this long-distance relationship for a while, and she actually owns a brothel. And her brothel gets attacked because she gets in trouble with a mob. And so her boyfriend, who is long-distance, he lives on the family, like, it's actually kind of like a commune that, like, she partially owns because her family owns it, and, like, he's the, like, business manager for it. And they have had this interaction, and they have sex when they want to have it, and, you know, but they've been long distance, and so he had no idea she owned a brothel or any of these things were happening. And when he finds out, he also has a past that he hasn't shared, but he's like, no, this is done. You're coming home, and I'm going to help you get back to who you're supposed to be. So he turns it on. He has been hiding all of his sexual proclivities from her because he didn't think she wanted them. And number one, I like love that story because I love when they're like hiding it and then it just all comes out and it's like, this is who I really am, and I love that. But he really like locks it down. And so there's parts about it I don't like because he like gives her a safe word, but the safe word is like literally if you feel like you're going to like die or something, I'm in control. Always, for everything. I choose your clothes. I choose when you eat. You're going to be like this. If you misbehave, they say. So it's further into BDSM than I like to go because I don't really like service sub stuff. And I don't really like that we can't tap out. Like, I don't like books where they live BDSM always. Usually. I'm not a huge fan of that. I like when we can snap in and out. There's actually a couple examples on this book where I'm changing my mind. But this one worked for me because you can see how out of control she is, and he knows that he's going to be this controlling for now until she like can break some of that like anger down. Like, she has a lot of stuff towards her family and things that are going on, and there's a whole nother mystery happening and stuff too. There was a lot going on in this book. It was really good. So I loved it for all of that, but it is uncomfortable. It's not the sweet like punishment kind of BDSM where you're like, oh, I'm gonna punish you because you like didn't do this thing, but like we want to be punished. No, it was pretty intense, but I liked it overall. Then The Virgin and the Beast by Stacia Black. So this is a arranged marriage, captor-captive, BDSM, master-slave. It's a lot. So because this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, this is a girl who her father owes this guy a lot of money. He is secretly a billionaire, but he is deformed because of reasons. And he needs an heir by a certain age, but we don't know. We know he needs an heir, but we don't realize that if she had, like, because that's the whole point of this story is, like, he needs an heir. So, like, if she didn't get pregnant literally the first time that they, like, did all this, like, he would have lost it. So he literally makes a bid for the last chance. So it's really kind of like the, like, Beauty and the Beast tale where, like, it's his last chance. But he is very controlling, so he has a lot of rules for her. And this really is the slave. And, like, when she breaks the rules, like, she gets locked in, like, a chicken coop until she caves and is willing to listen to him. It was intense. It was, oh my gosh, like, it was really intense. And I was hate reading the first half of it, but then some stuff happens where I got really into this book. And it had some really good stuff. But again, things I don't like when we have to live the life 100% of the time. And this is again the case of like they're living the life 100% of the time until he can like trust her. And also he has some mental breaks that need to like snap a little bit because he is like damaged in a few ways. So again, twisted, a little bit crazy, but this is actually like there's a trilogy that's all about this farm. So the place that he lives, he has this farm where he like takes care of injured horses and like nurses them back to health. I love it so much. And so there's actually a trilogy that is about this farm. So we get to see this couple in the next 2 books, and we see them over like a 7-year period, I think, because book 2 is about the vet. We meet a vet in the first one, and then in the third one it's about a couple of their ranch hands who end up in a menage together. So I really liked this book, but it was very uncomfortable for a lot of parts of it. So be warned going in that it is uncomfortable and things happen. So you've been warned. Then I gotta talk about The Master by Kresley Cole. And this one has to go on this list because this book is bonkers and it doesn't follow the rules very well. But it also had some of the funnest, kinkiest, like, BDSM stuff I've ever seen. But I wouldn't consider it a, like, we're following the BDSM rules. They just do a lot of kink together. But the Master is this girl decides to be a prostitute for one night only. Because she is on the run and she can't, like, get a regular job or someone will find her. And he gets a different prostitute every time. And she doesn't match any of the qualifications because her friend did, but her friend got the flu or a bladder infection. I can't remember what her friend had, but her friend was sick. And so she takes her place. And the guy's like, you literally don't match any of my things. And she's like, do you still, like, do you want to fuck or not? And so she breaks all his rules. She's not supposed to touch him. She's not supposed to, like, talk back to him. And, like, those were just the rules for, like, a prostitute, like, having, you know, an escort, having a one-night thing with him. And he likes her a whole lot. So he calls to get her again the second time. And he offers even more money for her. And he never goes with anyone twice. But she just shocks him. And so she does it. She goes back. Only this time, they, like, don't use a condom, which is both of their faults, okay? But also, she got really, like, aggressive in the moment, and she's not on birth control. So, which, not the smartest idea to promise to be a prostitute for a couple nights and not be on any of those things. But, so the next day, he thinks that she tried to trap him. So he is going to make her stay with him until he finds out if she's pregnant or not. However, she, like, agrees to, well, he makes her stay. But she also in her head is like, you know what? She's running from some people. And she's like, what would be a safer place to be stuck than in this guy's penthouse where we're going to have lots of kinky sex, some anger of sex too. We're going to do all these kinky things, and he's going to feed me and buy me things and take care of me. And once I get my period and he knows I'm not pregnant, then I can leave. It's bonkers, but it's Kresley Cole, and it's amazing. And so this book has a modern-day chastity belt used, and it may disturb you. It may turn you on a lot. It turned me on a lot. I did not think I would like how a chastity belt was used, but holy shit. I did. Woo! Kresley Cole, lady, you're crazy. Then there is two more crazy ones. So there's Degradation by Stylo Fantome. So I included this one in there because this has a lot to do with the shaming and, again, degradation parts of this. This is a series. I think there's 3 main novels and then, like, a novella novel. And this is about a girl and a guy. He was dating her sister. She is a few years younger. And I think she's, like, 18 and he's, like, 25 when this happens, where they have been, like, flirting around each other. He has, like, broken up with her sister or is about to break up with her sister. It's dubious what his relationship with her sister is. But she and him, like, they have sex at the very beginning of this book. And they have almost like this hate sex because they both have this strong attraction to each other. But he, like, is always criticizing her and she just will just slap back. So they have this really antagonistic relationship. And it just all boils over and they do it. And then her sister comes in and he's like, girl, we've been broken up. But still, you're with her sister. So even if you're broken up, I'm like, but her family shuns her for this. So she loses her trust fund. She loses everything, loses her chance to go to the college she wanted to. And nothing happens to him. He just goes on with his life, breaks up with her sister, whatever. And then she runs into him, I can't remember where, because I read this at the very beginning of 2020, which is 500 books ago. But they run into each other and the heat is instantly there. But now she's a different person. She's a different person than she was before. But they're still extremely attracted to each other. So they enter into a relationship where kink is definitely involved, but there's not like, there's not safe words or things like that. There's a lot of like the shame and the like jealousy aspects in it. But it was a really sexy series, and I really, really liked it. I liked it a lot. This is a series I plan to purchase as well. And then the last one I want to talk about, which is, when I look at the list, like, second really only to The Virgin and the Beast for how, like, coercive it is. And that is, and I say that because the master, he kidnaps her, but, like, she still agreed to go there 2 times. She agreed to this. So there's some buy-in. But this is called Stealing Cinderella by A. Zaverelli. So this is part of the, like, Sinister Fairy Tales collection. I really liked this one. I had a so-so relationship with that collection. There was only like 3 out of the 8 that I read that I really liked. And this one is about a girl that I can't remember how the situation starts. I just know, I think he kidnaps her. Yeah, he kidnaps her and ties her to a bed and is like going to force her to be his sex slave. And in return, he's going to do certain things for her. But he's like making her be part of this agreement. There was no like, hey, will you do this for me? And then he's like, be my sex slave. Nope, he kidnaps her first, gives her some orgasms, rapes her. Like, it happens. It does. We'll put it out there. And they end up in this relationship. But he is, I think he's like, he's not a prince. Is he a prince? He might be a prince. He has a lot of weird family stuff going on, and so he's supposed to marry a certain person, but of course he ends up falling for her. I didn't explain this very well. Besides that, like, first really uncomfortable scene, like, I actually really, really like this setup. But it is the Sinister Fairy Tale collection, and those don't have, but that's why I said there's some other elements of, like, BDSM that get involved, including punishments and rules and stuff like that. So that's why I included it in this, but again, it is in the crazy part of it. So the rules aren't followed. If you're looking for well set up BDSM, see the beginning of this video. So there you go. There is my recommendations. I've read many more BDSM novels than this at the point, but I feel like the other ones that I read, they kind of fit in between the spectrum. Like they're ones where, they follow the rules and everything's set, but they don't talk about it, which is what I really wanted the first half of this video to be about, is books where they talk about the elements of BDSM and say what they need from their partner and their partner says what they need from them. I love that. I just, I want it to be there. And then the other ones where they are using elements of kink and BDSM, but it's not explicitly talked about. And so technically, like, you could get into some uncomfortable positions with that if you haven't set up your setups before. So there you go. There is my recommendations for BDSM. Please make sure you subscribe to my channel. There will be some dark romance recommendations waiting for you at the end of this video if you want to check out that playlist. Please like and subscribe to my channel. This video will probably get demonetized or limited because I'm talking about, like, I'm specifically naming the things. So if you want to help my channel out, please follow me on the social medias so that I still have you with me, even if YouTube gets mad. So there's that. Thank you so much for watching. I put out new videos 3 to 4 times a week, and you can watch some more of them right now. Bye.